Well, welcome into another episode of What's the Lingo, hosted by your boy Armani Lingo. And guys, I am super excited for this one. Can't wait to get straight into it. But hey, before we do, if you haven't, click that subscribe button down below. Will certainly help me grow the channel. And guys, I have a ton of great sports content coming for you guys going forward. And hey, while you're at it, click the like button. But either way, guys, I love you all, and I appreciate you guys just clicking on this video and being here with me. So let's get straight into it. So what's the lingo for today? Well, we have the Four Nations Tournament. Started in Montreal, Canada, and then headed its way down south to Boston, Massachusetts. If I'm saying that right, Massachusetts. But man, this is the first time that NHL players get some international competition since the 2014 Winter Olympics. So Gary Bettman having the players, having his boys back in the international competition. And kind of how I'm going to segment this video and kind of break up this video is I'm going to have my reaction to the tournament. We're going to be talking about how this tournament benefits the NHL and the future of international hockey going forward. So if you're interested in one of those topics, you are more than welcome to skip with the chapters down below. But let's get straight into my reaction for this Four Nations tournament. And we're going to be starting off with tonight's game, USA versus Canada in Boston, part 2. And then we'll kind of work our way back talking about the tournament. We'll certainly get into the first game of USA versus Canada, so don't worry about that. We'll cover that, but man, today's game in Boston, what a game. I mean, what a game. If you were a non-hockey fan and that was one of your first hockey games you've watched on television, that's what hockey's all about right there. That's what it's all about. And you got to applaud Canada and the USA players for the way they played today. That was solid hockey. A lot different vibe from the first game, but that's clean, best on best hockey right there. So let's kind of jump into Team Canada, the winners of the Four Nations tournament. Ain't it crazy that what really won them this game is goaltending? I mean, going into this tournament, that was their main weakness, was goaltending. Jordan Binnington, on paper, was nowhere near Connor Hellebuyck, or really Jake Ottinger. I mean, Connor Hellebuyck is having arguably an MVP season. He's most likely going to win the Vezina. But when it mattered most, Jordan Binnington looked like 2019 St. Louis Blues goaltending right there. He came up clutch. I thought he was the MVP of today's game, making huge saves. I mean, Austin Matthews is going to have nightmares after tonight. He made like 2 or 3 big saves on Austin Matthews, made a beautiful glove save on Brady Tkachuk. But that's what solid goaltending does for you right there. Wins you championships, wins you games. And yeah, he was just solid throughout the night. You know, you would think in moments like this, these guys would panic, but remain calm, came up with some huge saves, and then it ultimately led to Connor McDavid winning the game in overtime. How fitting is that, right? How fitting is that? I mean, the NHL, if they scripted this game, couldn't be scripted any better. Connor McDavid beating Team USA in overtime, getting the game-winning goal. I mean, you can't write it any better than that. And that's the future for Canada right there. It's Connor McDavid, Canadian hockey. Sidney Crosby passing that torch right to Connor McDavid. That was the golden goal right there. And man, it really does sting for Team USA. And we'll talk about Team USA in a bit. But yeah, for Canada, this is, I mean, they heard it these past couple of days, right? They heard it this past week. Just USA beating them in game one. All the memes, all the jokes. I mean, you don't think these players hear about that? USA fans got a little cocky there, I'm not going to lie. All the 51st state jokes. I mean, they were brutal. Saying that this isn't even the America's best sport. And beat y'all. All the trash talk leading up to game two. I mean, you could tell it lit a spark for Canada. And man, just imagine for a second if Canada would have lost this game. How on top USA hockey would be right now. Dethroning the champs. But they came right back and they responded well. You got to give that to Canada. Like I said, they were going into this one, a lot of pressure on Canada. All the pressure was in Canada, in my opinion. I mean, yeah, America and all the USA hockey fans' trash talk did not help, but a lot of pressure for Canada losing this one. So kudos to Canada. Connor McDavid, Jordan Binnington. Jordan was the main reason why Canada really won today, but Connor McDavid. And it's so interesting because McDavid, you can argue he didn't have the best tournament, especially for today's game. Just looked a bit sloppy. Wasn't controlling the puck very well. You know, we've seen Connor McDavid better than that. He had that one nice goal, obviously, in game one for USA versus Canada. That beautiful backhand goal. But, you know, at times, if you were watching the game, he was good there and then just didn't look like himself there. But when it mattered most, he delivered. And beautiful shot by Connor McDavid, by the way. And it's crazy to me because how do you leave the best player in the world wide open like that in the slot? Wide open, had all day to pick a corner, and he beat Connor Hellebuck cleanly. So hey, kudos to Canada. Well-deserved win, obviously. They heard it in the media. That was the main headlines this past week in sports. It's absolutely crazy, and we'll get to the media part a bit later and how the media and politics benefited hockey. And yes, we're not going to get too deep into politics, don't worry. This isn't a political channel. But politics did indeed help this tournament. But now I want to kind of transition into USA and just kind of say, man, they were right there. They were right there. With how banged up they were, I mean, Matthew and Brady, you can tell. Even with Matthew, he had to sit out the whole third period and didn't play after that. But these guys were playing injured. It was a huge loss when they lost Charlie McAvoy. I mean, he was fantastic in game one. Big reason why they won. He did a fantastic job of shutting down Connor McDavid. And that's one of the big reasons why McDavid didn't have the best tournament. Was a big part of it was because of that game one with USA and Canada. McAvoy did a fantastic job shutting him down, but unfortunately got injured in that Finland game hitting the post, so hope he's okay. But yeah, so these guys, the USA was playing a man down. You can argue like 3 or 4 guys were absolutely banged up, but they wanted to be out there, play for their country. And they were right there. They were right there. Matthews had grade A opportunities in overtime to end the game. And that's how good Binnington was today. But, you know, thinking about it, they practically, you can argue they were the better team tonight. They were certainly the better team in overtime. So if you're a USA hockey fan, or if you're new to hockey, American, cheering on this team, don't worry. This team's going to be just fine. My argument would be, if these guys were fully healthy, they had Charlie in the lineup, there was nothing wrong with the Chuck brothers, that they could have possibly won this game. But coulda, woulda, shoulda, right? Coulda, woulda, shoulda. No excuses at the end of the day. No need to panic, though. USA Hockey is trending in the right direction. And this this Four Nations tournament really set up the Olympics going forward. I mean, this is going to be the headlines going into the 2026 Winter Olympics is going to be insane. It's all because of this tournament right here. So yeah, I really believe, though, that this USA Hockey team will be just fine. I still think goaltending's a lot better. They still have the upper hand on goaltending. They have enough firepower on offense to compete with Canada, but really their main reason for success, or what really builds this team, is their defense. The way they play defense. And they played really good in shutting down Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby. Some of the most talented players in the NHL. I mean, you can't hold those guys for super long. I know McKinnon, McDavid, they all got goals against USA. But if you watched it, they didn't give them a whole lot of space. They didn't do nothing crazy, except for that one Connor McDavid goal is an exception. But they weren't as consistent as you would expect those players to be. So kudos to America. They'll be just fine going forward. Don't worry about them. And now kind of transitioning back to Game 1, USA versus Canada in Montreal. That's what kickstarted everything, right? That's what really put this tournament on the map. And people saw that coming from a mile away. Though the first 9 seconds of that game changed hockey forever. I'm being serious. The first 9 seconds where 3 fights broke out changed the game of hockey forever. Not only did it reinvigorate a historical rival between USA and Canada, but it just gave the national media, social media, to market something, to show everyone how tough, how passionate hockey players are. Not only for the country, but for the sport. So, say what you want. If those 3 fights had not happened in this game, today's game, Game 2, would have not been as big, okay? Sorry to say. That's what set the tone right there for the whole tournament. And those 9 seconds set the tone for what's yet to come for international hockey going forward. So you got to applaud the Chuck brothers for that, because they for sure planned that out, texting each other in the group chat. And kudos for Canada for just not backing down and dropping it. I love what Brandon Hagel said, that he was doing it for his country, doing it for the flag. And that right there just shows why hockey players, in my opinion, are just some of the greatest athletes. And tell me right now, if you want to watch 2 big rivals, or 2 countries that have, I guess, political beefs, whatnot, we'll kind of mention the political stuff a little bit later, but tell me right now, if you want to watch 2 countries go at it in a team sport, why not hockey? Why not hockey? Soccer, and don't get me wrong, very traditional, very historical sport. But come on now. Half the guys are diving all the time. Basketball, You throw a punch, you're getting ejected. And it's just basketball, and this will probably be another video for another time or an argument for another day. Basketball is not the same as it used to be. In today's era, it's not the same as it used to be. Baseball, you want to sit there for 9 innings watching someone try and hit a ball? And no shade on baseball. I'm just saying. In hockey, you get a little bit of everything. No other sport has it where you can drop the gloves, punch someone in the face, sit in a box for 5 minutes and come right out, and you can do it again if you wanted to, and still play. The pace of hockey, no other sport can match that. Fast, intense, and something's always going on. So, tell me right now that hockey's on top. Hockey is on top. This was for sure their shining moment. And the NHL desperately, desperately needed this. Desperately. Talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, you can't also tell me that politics did not play a role in this. The whole booing the national anthem, I mean, that happened before the tournament. Coming into this, the whole tariff situation with Donald Trump calling Canada the 51st state in the future. So yeah, you can't tell me that politics played a big role in this. And you've probably seen it on all these political news channels, political media, them talking about the game, politicizing the game, and I don't really, like that too much. But everyone invested in it. And sometimes for a growing sport, especially with hockey, they need these type of storylines to get more eyes and attention on the game. So whether you're on one side or the other, you have to admit politics played a big role for the NHL in this one. And it benefited them at the end of the day. It benefited them. I've never seen Fox News, CNN talk about hockey until this past week, or these past couple of days. I've never seen them talk about it. I've never seen some of these political podcasts talk about hockey until this past week. So politics played a huge role in this. Not as big as the USA versus Soviet Union one with the Miracle on Ice, but it's obviously not, that's a total different time and events. Not trying to compare that, but the political aspect or the political spectrum definitely played a role in this Four Nations tournament between USA and Canada. What's crazy to me is that this is also just exhibition games. I know it was more than that, okay? But on paper, these are just exhibition games. Just Four Nations going at it, replacing the All-Star format. So kudos to Gary Bettman for really putting this together. I don't like how he kept NHL players away from international hockey for nearly 10 years. But you can't tell me those 10 years just built up the hype for this tournament. And now, this tournament for sure, I'm hoping so, gave Gary and the NHL a good reason to have players play internationally, NHL players play internationally from here on out. I mean, some of these players were saying this was the biggest game of their life. They're not even playing for the gold medal. Some of these guys played in Stanley Cup games. Stanley Cup Game 7 games. And they're saying this exhibition game is the biggest game of their life. I love it. I love it. And, oh man, this does so much for the NHL. So we now kind of get into how this tournament benefits the NHL. I don't have the numbers for today's game, Game 2 for USA versus Canada. I'm doing this right after the game, so stay tuned for more. But The first game between USA versus Canada, 4.4 million average viewers in America between USA and Canada, and then total in North America was 10.1 million views. Wow. And I think that was the most since the Stanley Cup 2014 game, where Alec Martinez defeated the New York Rangers. But man, this tournament really puts the NHL on a different level. As I mentioned earlier, the amount of attention they were getting from this tournament is insane. I've never seen hockey trend like this. I've never seen this much attention around that game. So, for Gary to do this tournament and for him to finally put NHL players back in international hockey, it really sets up the NHL for success. And I'm thinking that today's game, I honestly think it got 20 plus million views across North America. Easily, in my opinion. The way this game was hyped. But that's how the NHL needs to do this stuff, man. I think I've always thought the NHL has been terrible at marketing their own game. Just terrible. I thought they were always behind the NBA, and that's who they're trying to compete against is the NBA. The NFL, in my opinion, is on a total different level. It's on a total different level than all American sports. But really, the leagues you're competing against is the NBA and MLB. And heck, even the MLS when they got Messi. Because MLS is on the rise. But the NHL desperately, desperately needed this tournament. And this tournament not only, I guess shows what these players can do, but it just shows what the culture of the sport is and how these guys carry themselves. And people want that. I kind of mentioned the NBA a bit earlier and how players are just sitting out, not really giving it their all. And these guys get paid hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars more than hockey players. So if you're the NHL, with how bad the NBA's ratings have been this past year, this is the perfect time to where they got to start to take advantage. They got to start to take advantage and market their game better. You got the views this tournament. You got non-hockey fans, a lot of non-hockey fans to watch this tournament. So now market it from here and build the game. Build it up from here. Because this tournament's set up Gary Bettman in the NHL going forward. Set up. And it's crazy to think that NHL play starts this Saturday. I mean, ain't that crazy? So you got the eyes, you got the views, you got what you wanted out of this tournament. Now build off it, please. Please. There's so much momentum and hype after this. Build it up. Build it up going into the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I believe this is probably going to be, after this tournament, you can argue this is going to be one of the most viewed Stanley Cup playoffs of all time. I mean, last year, that Game 7 between Edmonton and Florida, pretty sure that broke the record for the most views all time. But yeah, very exciting for the NHL and hockey. And I've always said this, that they've just struggled to get people to watch their game. They've always been a step behind. They're very traditional. They don't want to get into the whole new social media realm and marketing their game. But after this tournament, build off from it. So in 2028, the World Cup of Hockey is back. 8 nations will face off. And so that means it's going to be 8 straight nations. There's not going to be Team North America or Team Europe. It's probably going to be Russia, Czech Republic, possibly Germany. I don't know. Latvia. So that's exciting news, of course. And as I mentioned multiple times, players will be playing in the Winter Olympics in 2026, and they will also be playing in the Winter Olympics in 2030. So good news right there. Hey guys, I just want to tell you thank you so much for clicking on the video. If some of you are wondering why I'm recording on my phone, is because my camera just died. So pretty much touched on everything. I just want to conclude off this video by telling you guys thank you so much. And hey, like I mentioned earlier in the video, if you haven't clicked the like button or subscribe, do that for me. We're going to have a ton of more sports content. And look, if you guys have any suggestions about sports content that you want to see, leave a comment down below. But hey, for now, guys, appreciate y'all, and we'll see you guys on the next one.